So what about when Christians disagree? Paul's letter to the church in Ephesus emphasises unity. The whole of humanity, that's the Jews and the Gentiles, those who weren't Jews, all coming together as one, and also one in God. And this is where we find our peace, our unity, through the death and the resurrection of Jesus Christ. Ephesians has one of my favourite verses in the chapter before the one we've just read. In chapter 3, verse 18, Paul wants everyone, listen to these words, to grasp how wide and long and high and deep is the love of Christ, and to know this love that surpasses knowledge. Surpasses knowledge. I love that. To know this love, yet it surpasses knowledge. Lovely paradox in the Bible. Deeper than our thinking, bigger than our minds is the love of Christ. And the peace, the unity, and this love amongst Christians is supposed to be, we are supposed to be a signpost to those who aren't Christians, pointing them towards God. Look how well they love each other. Wow, who is this God that brings them all together in such unity? I want to explore this God. You and I are to be a signpost to others. John 13, verse 35, by your love for each other, Christians, by your love for each other, they, those who aren't Christians, will know that you are my disciples. So, how terribly tragic when Christians disagree so badly. You could say when we disturb the peace, when we don't live out this precious unity, when we display a lack of love for each other. It's a shocking, awful, terrible witness to those outside of the church, seeing Christians infighting, bad-mouthing each other, falling out. And they might see that firsthand, they might pick it up, or they'll pick it up on social media if they look. The vitriol, the viciousness with which Christians reply to each other, talk to each other online is embarrassing. They might pick it up in the news, hearing about yet another division, yet another split, yet another problem within a denomination. We should also love each other. If that weren't enough reason, because our unity, our peace, although free to you and me, free to all of us, because it is by grace, was gained at unimaginable cost to Jesus. Paul urges us, what a strong word, Paul urges us, God urges us through Paul, to verse 3, make every effort to keep the unity of the Spirit through the bond of peace. Disagreement, seeing things differently, believe it or not, has gone on between Christians for the 2,000 years of the church's existence. It's nothing new. Do you or say yourself, or do you ever hear people say, we just need to go back to be like the early church? A big misunderstanding. There was lots good in the early church. But the answer to that is, which early church are you talking about? There was no one way of being church. It's been described as a mosaic of Christian beliefs. There have always been tensions, always been disagreements within churches too. Why else, think about it with the letter, why else would Paul be urging the Christians in Ephesus to love each other? If it was all going well, he wouldn't need to write that in a letter. And also, let's put the spotlight on Paul. Let's look at his example. He had a disagreement as well, many disagreements, but one in particular with the leaders of the church in Jerusalem. So these faithful people were reading the Old Testament, and their understanding of the Old Testament is that initially when the church started, Christians should focus on bringing Jews to Christ, and then go and preach the good news to the Gentiles, to the non-Jews. But Paul said, no, God has told me to take the gospel to the Gentiles. Big disagreement. And that's what he's referring to in chapter 3. So over the first few hundred years of Christianity, over the first few hundred years of the church, there were many disagreements over what Christians should believe. You can see why the Catholic Church invented this idea, this dogma of the infallibility of the Pope. What the Pope says goes. That will sort out all the problems. But no surprise, Christians who weren't part of Catholicism disagreed with that as well. What were known as rules of faith and then developed into what we know as the creeds, they did bring some uniformity, yet diversity of beliefs remained. The Nicene Creed, which we still use today and is so rich, we believe in one God, is the creed that we use at our covenant service. But there were tensions between the Greek Orthodox Church in the first few hundred years of the church and the Catholic Church, the Church of Rome. And this came to a head because of the Nicene Creed. The Catholics added one word, filioque. You can see why they fell out, can't you? Filioque. And this brought the split to a head, and the whole church, they divided over one word. And this was all about the Trinity, saying that the Spirit proceeded from the Son as well as the Father. But another reason why churches split. Thank goodness, I hear you say. Thank goodness for the 16th century Protestant Reformation. The Bible finally in the hands of the people, not just in the hands of the priests. This is what it means. Just do it. In the hands of the people. Unity at last. Protestants no longer under the Pope. Well, I was chatting online to one of my old professors of New Testament, John Colwell. I often mention him. And he reminded me of a quote in one of his books with this in mind. He said, yes, Mike, we deposed one infallible Pope and replaced him with as many infallible popes as we have Christians reading their Bibles dogmatically. We had one Pope, and then we had the danger of us all reading the Bible dogmatically and becoming little popes. So freedom from Rome didn't bring the rest of Christianity greater unity. Diversity in beliefs became yet another obstacle to unity. And we very often disagreed very badly over the years. This is all very dire, isn't it? All very dismal. So is there any hope for us today? Is there any hope for us today? Yes. Yes, if in line with verse 2, there is an outbreak amongst Christians of being humble and gentle, patient, bearing with one another. Paul also gives us another big reason why we should remain humble. Listen to these words, familiar words perhaps, from 1 Corinthians chapter 13. Listen to them afresh. For now we only see as a reflection in a mirror, or as the King James Version says, through a glass darkly. Then, at Jesus' return at the second coming, then we shall see face to face. Now I know in part, then I will know fully. Unless you didn't realise, nobody knows it all yet. We are looking through the glass darkly. It's all hazy. We have revelation, but it is incomplete. This is reiterated. It's a little bit hidden in our reading today, but this point is reiterated exactly within our reading. Verse 3, if you glance down, this speaks of our unity in the Spirit. Paul is referring to this unity in the Spirit. Now, this is a unity which is given. This is present tense. This is now a unity that is given and made possible through Christ, through the one Spirit that dwells in all of us. That is a fact. Our challenge is to live out that unity, but it is a given. But when it comes to what Paul refers to as the unity in the faith, what we believe, what we understand about one Lord, one baptism, one God, one Father of all, we are working towards such unity, not present tense. Verse 13, we see that the church is being built up until we reach unity in the faith and in the knowledge of the Son of God. Do you see the picture? It is incomplete. Our understanding, our seeing is incomplete. The completion will only come at the return of Jesus. Until then, until we see him face to face, we will all be looking through the glass darkly. So knowing that we see some aspects of faith differently as Christians, in the meantime we are to heed God's call to nevertheless live in peace, live in unity, live out of love with each other, live out this unity of the Spirit. You and I, every Christian, doing all that we can to make sure that what we believe doesn't cause unnecessary division. When we do disagree, and that's inevitable, it's a part of our not knowing everything, we must disagree so well. I'm going to look at three aspects of this. What about when we disagree within local church? What about when we disagree within the Baptist Union? And what about when different denominations disagree? Let's first look at within local church. Did you know, and maybe this will encourage you, disagreeing can actually be really healthy. Unity doesn't mean uniformity. In this letter to the church in Ephesus, we're told in this chapter that we have different gifts. We're also told that we come from different ethnic backgrounds. There's diversity, but also be encouraged that we are allowed to think differently. We are allowed to have different understandings. Again, it's more about how we disagree on matters of faith. What the Bible warns against is quarrelling over disputable matters. We mustn't argue in a way that damages each other. We mustn't argue in a way that ruins, spoils our witness to others. Think about local church. Think about discipleship. We are all called to be disciples, learners. We are all called to becoming more Christ-like. Think about this. Disagreements in church are a great discipleship opportunity. Disagreements about what we believe, disagreements about biblical interpretation actually provide an opportunity for you and me to grow. What Peter referred to last week as a school of love, a very real, active, living school of love. This is the place, local church, where we are to learn humility, gentleness, patience, bearing with one another in love. It's been said that a concern for truth is not an excuse for unkindness. A concern for truth is not an excuse for unkindness. Also with local church in mind, think of our covenant last week. A proper covenant attitude towards each other can actually provide a safe environment when we do it well. A safe place to be a school of love in which we can disagree. Disagree in the security of covenant. We can work things out together. We can work out our differences. We can actually learn from somebody who sees things differently. If we see ourselves in long-term commitment with each other, not going to disagree and run away.